Yes. Yeah. I confused myself.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order the open meeting for Tuesday, November 21st, 2023, and ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, November 9th, 2023, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
Move we approve the minutes of Thursday, November 9th.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there's no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 13, the draft final decision associated with agenda item 14, closing docket 381 WI 100, the draft final decision associated with agenda item 15, closing docket 1820 WI 100, the draft final decision associated with agenda item 16, closing docket 1830 WI 100, the draft final decision associated with agenda item 17, closing docket 2260 WI 100, or the draft final decision associated with agenda item 18, closing docket 2288 WI 102.
Move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 5.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 6 through 13.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And in docket 381 WI 100, I move we approve the final decision. Final decision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
In docket 1820 WI 100, move we approve the final decision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. In docket 1830 WI 100, move we approve the final decision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And in docket 2260 WI 102, move we approve the final decision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And in docket 2288 WI 102, I move we approve the final decision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that takes us to agenda item 19, which is docket 5-UR-110. All right. This is the joint application of Wisconsin Electric Power Company and Wisconsin Gas LLC for authority to adjust electric, natural gas, and steam rates. This is a limited electric and natural gas reopener along with the 2024 fuel cost plan. So just by way of background, in 2022, Wisconsin Electric and Wisconsin Gas sought a limited electric and natural gas reopener to address capital investment in generation facilities, savings in O&M, and fuel related to the retirement of coal-fired power plants, and capital investments in liquefied natural gas storage facilities that were previously approved by the Commission, as well as the associated incremental O&M for operating the LNG facilities. This Commission granted applicants requested for a limited reopener, and also directed Wisconsin Electric to include additional information about its storm hardening program and to analyze alternatives for the future recovery of the undepreciated book balance that will exist at the Oak Creek Power Plant when that facility is retired. Specifically, our final decision in docket 5-UR-10 includes order conditions 34 and 35. I'm going to read both of those order points. Order condition 34, quote, "The applicants shall file a limited electric rate reopener for 2024 to address the revenue requirements associated with recovering new capital investments that will achieve commercial operation in 2023 and 2024, as well as to address reduced operations and maintenance expense from future coal plant retirements. The Commission also requires the applicants to include details regarding its storm hardening program, and the applicants shall also report on all funding opportunities, including any federal grants or other forms of financial assistance that the applicants have pursued or are pursuing related to this program, and shall include the analysis of alternative recovery scenarios for OCPP." Order condition 35 states, quote, "The applicant shall file a limited natural gas reopener for 2024 to address the additional revenue requirements associated with a new facility being in service for a full year and a liquefied natural gas facility that will achieve commercial operation during 2024. At the end of 2025, Wisconsin Electric plans to retire all 4 coal units that are currently in operation at Oak Creek Power Plant, units 5, 6, 7, and 8. Units 5 and 6 are scheduled to retire in May of 2024. Units 7 and 8, as well as the rest of the common plant assets, are scheduled to retire in December of 2025. So while units 5 and 6 are scheduled to retire in May of '24, the bulk of Wisconsin Electric's undepreciated investment in OCPP will continue to be in service until the entire power plant is retired on December 31st, 2025. In a previous decision, we've already ordered the company to defer the differences between the estimated and actual revenue requirement associated with retiring units 5 and 6. Applicants therefore did not request any decision about the undepreciated plant at Oak Creek in this proceeding. That will occur at a later date. Yeah, I already said that. I'm not going to repeat myself. Applicants are not requesting any changes to the underlying class cost of service studies, revenue allocation, or rate design. And because revenue allocation is outside the scope of this limited reopener, staff has also followed the same allocation as what was approved for the 2023 test year. And I bring that up now because there was a lot of testimony and a lot of time on the record devoted to the revenue allocation and the cost of service and whether and how it should be reallocated. But that's clearly outside the scope. And that's particularly why I read the order points, because I want us to be very clear that it would be inappropriate to consider individual rate design aspects as part of this proceeding. And if parties want that to be a part of a limited reopener, then the time to make that argument is when the request for the limited reopener is made, so that we can then opine on whether or not to allow for different allocations to be done in a limited reopener. So the applicants proposed to raise WEPCO's electric rates by roughly $86.3 million, to raise WEPCO's gas rates by $23.9 million, and to raise Wisconsin Gas's gas rates by $22.2 million, all in 2024. After Commission staff's audit, staff recommends a $76.4 million increase for WEPCO's Wisconsin jurisdictional electric operations, a $21.3 million increase for WEPCO's gas operations, and a $19.5 million increase for Wisconsin Gas's gas operations revenue in 2024. My understanding from the Commission Secretary is that in this case, we do not need to address any uncontested issues. So with that serving as our background, I'll pause and see if my colleagues want to say anything before we dive into the decision matrix.
I'll just say a few quick remarks. Thank you, Chair, for setting up the docket here. I'll just want to first thank the staff again, thank the parties. I'll repeat what I said in the past. There was really 5 cases concurrently. A number of the parties were part of all of them, and so we do recognize there was a lot of overlapping and interlocking deadlines that were challenging for the interveners in these cases, so appreciate your efforts. I also want to note the public comments that we received, I think about 290 in total, between individual comments, and some came through a petition, and then a number of people spoke in person in Milwaukee at the public hearing session. And again, a number of those comments were about affordability. It's residential customers who are really struggling to afford the basic expenses of heat and lights. So it's not really an issue in this case. There's the rate design, the programs are not going to be in front of us today, but I just want to recognize that we heard the comments, and it's top of mind. How can this company in particular continue to serve customers when so many of their customers are struggling? And so as we look to next year's rate case, I think a lot of trade-offs might be more fully developed in the next full case. So I'll just say that to start.
I appreciate that. And I think it bears repeating, and I think we all said it in the Power and Light case, and that is we've been pretty clear about the fact that energy affordability and energy burden is always an important part of our decision as we work to balance the interests of customers and the utility companies. But you're exactly right. We're not taking those issues up in this case. It's a very limited scope for this particular case. There will be additional opportunities, and I always welcome public involvement. I too want to thank staff. This has been a marathon of marathons, and they just continue to be incredibly professional, on top of being subject matter experts, and we're really fortunate to have all of you working alongside us, and so thank you for that. Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. I don't have much to add, but I do want to also thank the staff, the applicant, the parties, and the public who participated in this. As I was not seated on the commission in 2022 and a lot of this action that led to the limited reopener occurred, I do appreciate your comments and your perspective and the context, because it really helps me kind of understand where you were then and how that leads into where we are today. And then thank you again for your comments regarding affordability. I wholeheartedly echo those. So thank you.
All right, so the first issue in front of us is whether or not incremental revenue requirement impacts for certain facilities should be included. And in particular, we're looking at facilities, solar facilities that were authorized previously, as well as the acquisition of West Riverside 1, which has been previously authorized. Our commission staff witness Deborah Probst made 2 adjustments to electric operations related to Badger Hollow 2 and West Riverside 2, and we will discuss those later on. But in terms of the incremental revenue requirement, I think it's appropriate, and it follows the spirit and the letter of the order point that authorized, excuse me, that authorized the applicants to file this limited rate reopener. So for this one, I'm at alternative 1. Commissioner Huebner?
Yep, I'm at the same spot, and I think, again, this is a limited case, so we're not going to get into all of the balances of risk and reward, but I just want to state clearly for everyone to hear that this is something that is extremely constructive about our commission, is that when we approve projects, we authorize those to be collected in rates because they're going to serve the public and they're going to serve the customers. And this particular case, one of the main drivers of the reopener was there was construction that was going to happen. A number of these projects have either now come into service or will, and we're going to deal with deferrals about those changing dates in a minute. But I think that's just really important for people to understand, is that we are a very timely and responsive commission in this manner. So,
Great.
Thanks.
Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1, thank you.
Okay. All right, the next is something that's referred to as distribution-connected solar. So these are smaller projects that don't rise to the level of requiring any pre-authorization from us before they are constructed. But they are a part of the company's generation portfolio. And so they are seeking to include the incremental revenue impact for their 2024 test year. And we got some testimony about the fact that the applicants didn't provide enough information to demonstrate that these projects should be included in the rate base. But again, because they don't rise to the level of requiring our statutory authorization, there's not a whole heck of a lot that we can do other than look at the costs and determine whether or not they are prudent and that they're estimated incremental revenue requirement impact is also prudent and reasonable. And so I really took to heart Walnut's Way testimony about site selection criteria for these types of projects. And I think that it bears just stating on the record that they have a point. I mean, they indicated that they have, this particular utility has an incredibly diverse customer base and service territory. And I think it would behoove them to understand that all segments of their customer base both want and deserve more local, clean energy solutions. And so as the company looks at the prospect of additional federal funding to come in or different pilot programs, I would encourage them to take this testimony to heart, that because they have such a wide, large service territory that is incredibly diverse, that should go into their siting selection. That being said, our commission staff found no concerns with the inclusion of any of these projects. And because of that, I was comfortable including the incremental impact for these projects. So I'm at alternative 1. Commissioner Huebner?
Yep, I'll join you there. I'm at the same spot. The one point I'll make is that the utility does continue to have renewable energy programs that are more dedicated to customers, and these seem like the type of projects that might be able to be paid for or gather the interest of particular large customers. So while in this case, I did look at the spreadsheet and talked with staff in particular about the capacity value, and it did seem to reflect how MISO's changing, which is much lower than what we've had in the past for capacity value, and that was accounted for. So I felt comfortable with the numbers here, but I'll just continue to reiterate, they've got renewable programs where there might be customers willing to pay for these for their own sustainability goals that actually don't require it to come into rate base. So I think that's an annual, it's the 2023 anniversary of my call for using those programs.
All right, Commissioner Strand.
I'm also at alternative 1, and I agree with what you both said about site selection and other customers. So, agreed. Thank you.
Okay. Issue 3 is, should the incremental revenue requirement impact for Badger Hollow 2 be included? There were no concerns with the estimated revenue requirement impacts for this case. There was a little confusion that crept into the discussion about Badger Hollow 2. To be clear, in this issue 3, we are not talking about force majeure. We are talking strictly about the incremental revenue requirement impacts. Issue 3A is going to talk about cost overruns, not force majeure, but cost overruns. So as a threshold matter, issue 3, according to our analysis, found no concerns with the applicant's estimated revenue requirement impacts of this particular facility, Badger Hollow 2. So because of that, I'm at alternative 1. Commissioner Huebner?
I'm at alternative 1 for those same reasons.
Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1, thank you.
Okay, all right, now issue 3A. The header is incorrect. What we are looking at are additional cost overruns in the amount of $10 million. So in docket 5BS 234, the commission authorized the acquisition costs for Badger Hollow 2 in the amount of $194.9 million plus AFUDC. WEPCO's share of that cost was $130 million. In the initial proceedings that we had in this case that occurred last year, this commission authorized WEPCO to recover $21.3 million in its 2023 test year for its share of force majeure costs that went back to June of 2022. So what we're looking at in terms of total authorized costs for Badger Hollow 2 for this utility as of the 2023 test year is $151.3 million. What is at issue in 3A are not those June 2022 force majeure costs, but instead additional cost overruns that were identified by the applicant in the amount of $10 million. Now, There were also additional force majeure costs, but those come to us in the next issue, 3B. So, consistent with the position that I have taken about how we look at these construction and acquisition cases, I am going to defer this cost increase to a future rate proceeding. And here's why. I was the vocal sort of proponent of we have to start putting in costs that mean something and that utilities feel they are going to be held accountable to stay within that budget. All of us have budgets in our own personal lives and in our professional lives that we have to manage. And this is a situation where, as you indicated, Commissioner Huebner, you know, we go through the review process of whether or not the construction of a facility is in the public interest. And that's just, do we need the facility? Do we need to be building more? That's the first question. And we always talk in those construction cases about our ability to examine costs at a future rate recovery proceeding. This is that situation. So I think that it makes sense for us to defer these costs until we have an opportunity to make sure that they were incurred properly. And it's not as simple as, well, yeah, you authorized this amount of money, but life is tough and inflation is high and supply chain is tight, so it's going to cost 30% more. No, that can't be the answer. We have to be hawks when it comes to protecting customer dollars, especially in a time where we are seeing construction application, acquisition application, one after another after another. And so one option is we pump the brakes and we don't allow for new projects to be constructed. I'm not necessarily saying that that's the right path, but when we have issues of cost overruns in front of us, I think we have to be really deliberate and very, very diligent when we decide whether or not to allow for those costs to be recovered. So because of that, for this issue, I'm at Alt 2. I would defer those cost increases to a future case. Commissioner Huebner?
I'm in the same spot for the same reasons.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
I am as well. Thank you.
All right. And so issue 3A is sub-issue. If we do authorize deferral, should we authorize carrying costs? Consistent with the positions I've taken in the last 4 rate cases or 3 rate cases, I would not authorize carrying costs. So I'm at alternative 2.
I'm at alternative 2 as well.
I can join you there. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then issue 3B. So in the course of applicants filing their notification in Badger Hollow 2, it became apparent that there was a change in the guaranteed in-service date for the facility. And because of that, consistent with what we did in the MG&E case, I would defer the incremental revenue requirement impact of this change to the guaranteed in-service date. So that puts me at alternative 1. Commissioner Huebner.
Yep, I'm at alternative 1 as well.
Commissioner Strand.
Alternative 1.
Okay. And then for purposes of whether or not to authorize carrying costs, again, consistent with my decision in MG&E related to Badger Hollow, I am at alternative 1. I would authorize the carrying costs using the economic cost of capital for capital investments and the short-term debt rate for any non-capital components, Alt 1.
I guess it was my understanding that we had done the short-term debt for all in our previous one, but
No, not for, I don't believe so. When, for,
Yeah. No, not, it's not.
you had been at alt 1 in
I'm
the past.
consistent, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
we did do short-term debt.
Yep,
For all.
yes.
Because they were non-capital components. I think they So are you doing short-term for all?
Yes.
Using-
No, I'm doing short-term for all. So I guess it's a modified,
Yeah.
I guess I'll just make a new alternative.
Yeah.
Alternative 3, I would authorize carrying costs at the short-term debt rate.
Okay.
Period.
That's what I have
Consistent
had
with
too.
what we've done in the past.
Yep, so that's where I am too.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in the same spot.
Okay. All right. Issue 4, should the impacts of the West Riverside Option 2 acquisition be included in the revenue requirement? Based on our previous decisions with Power and Light, I think that this is premature, so I would not include any of the impacts in this proceeding. So I'm at alternative 2.
I am as well.
Alternative 2, thank you.
All right, issue 5. Just need to pull up. All right, there's some confidential information that went into the formation of my decision on this, so I want to be really careful. The issue is what's the appropriate maintenance budget for the Oak Creek Power Plant units? And so, as a condition of the limited reopener, that order point, I read, the applicants were to address reduced operating and maintenance expenses from future coal retirements. So in their application, the applicants identified a reduction to their revenue requirement of about $8.1 million for the Oak Creek units. And according to the company, that represents the incremental test year adjustments due to the delay in plant retirements. Now, commission staff went through and they looked at a couple of things. They looked at the hours of operation for the units, and they also looked at the historic spending when it comes to authorized maintenance budgets that we have given this company in particular. And as it relates to the maintenance for South Oak Creek, which is at issue, the historical look back demonstrates that this utility only spent about 57% of what they were authorized. And when you look at the confidential information related to when and how they're going to operate these units, those two things taken together persuaded me that we should include this adjustment. And so the order point specifically refers to reduced O&M expense from future coal plant retirements. There was some testimony and briefing by the applicant that this goes outside of the scope of the reopener. And I actually found this to be squarely within the scope of the reopener. And so because of all of those factors, I am at alternative 1, and I would include this additional adjustment to the unit maintenance dollar amount in this rate proceeding. Commissioner Huebner?
You're at alternative
1, yep,
That's where I was as well.
okay,
I am too, and thank you for the context, I appreciate it.
sure, okay. All right, let's see. Issue 6, what is the appropriate accounting treatment for the incremental revenue requirement impact of any change of in-service dates related to force majeure filing for the Paris Solar and the Paris Battery Energy Storage System? This, again, we decided in the MG&E case, and I'm going to be consistent with that decision, and that is I'm at alternative 1. I would defer the revenue requirement impact for those two facilities. Commissioner Huebner?
I'm at alternative 1 as well.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1,
Okay.
thank you.
And then whether or not we should authorize carrying costs, because it's the change to in-service, I was at alternative 1. I would authorize carrying costs and just at the short-term debt rate. So it's a new alternative 3.
That's where I'm at as well.
Okay. Commissioner Strand? Okay. Issue 7, should the material and supplies inventory associated with Weston Rice be included in the 2024 test year electric revenue requirement? I thought that this was reasonable to include. I understand that it was an error or it was an oversight, and that we didn't have a chance to include it in our estimated 2024 revenue requirement. However, this amount is reasonable and, in my mind, squarely fits within the language of the reopener. So I'm at alternative 1. I would include it. Commissioner Hebner?
Yeah, I'll join you there.
Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1, thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Issue 8 relates to the Bluff Creek liquefied natural gas project. So again, this was a specific order point to address the additional revenue requirements associated with the new facility being in service for a full year. And our staff found no concerns with the applicant's estimated revenue requirement impacts. This is a little, I'm going to deviate a little from the issue scope, and I'm just going to mention that we put in some testimony about who is benefiting from these LNG plants, and I think they made really strong arguments in terms of having to demonstrate which class of customers benefit from these facilities, and I would welcome and encourage that discussion to occur in the next comprehensive rate case, because we'll talk about rate design, but because there was no cost of service and the way that the revenue requirement was presented to us, the incremental impacts, we weren't able to run cost of service. But when it comes to these LNG plants, I do think that they raised an important issue that we're not going to be able to take up in this proceeding. But given that this is the first time one of the LNG facilities is coming up, I wanted to make a note so I didn't forget. But as it relates to the incremental revenue requirement, I was at alternative 1. Commissioner Hebner?
I'm in the same spot, alternative 1.
Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1, thank
Okay.
you.
And then issue 8A is, should the commission include the O&M impacts for the Bluff Creek LNG projects? And so this was a question about whether or not our intent was to include all aspects of revenue requirement, including O&M, in this reopener. And if that was our intent when we authorized the reopener, then this particular request is reasonable and falls in line. And that was certainly my intent. My intent was to include all aspects of revenue requirement, and revenue requirement includes O&M. And so because of that, I'm at alternative 1. I would incorporate the O&M impacts. Commissioner Hebner?
Yeah, for this, I was actually at alternative 2, and it was just more related to what the expense is going for. I'm not as familiar with these plants, but I didn't think there was anything in the record that described sort of how many staff are we talking about? What is the O&M going to be spent on? So I guess I felt like there wasn't sufficient information in the record. They put a number there, but I didn't know what added up to 2.6 million. So I was at alternative 2.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
So I had a note here, what is the scope of the reopener? And since you very well articulated that, and that's kind of what I was reading it as, then I'm at alternative 1 as well. I think it's appropriate to incorporate these.
Okay. All right. Okay, issue 9. Should the incremental revenue requirement impacts for Exonia LNG facility be included in the 2024 test year for Wisconsin gas revenue requirement? So I would include the incremental revenue requirement impact for Exonia. I'm at alternative 1. Commissioner Hebner?
Yeah, I'm at alternative 1 for this one.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1, thank you.
All right, and then the next one relates to the O&M impacts. And again, because it certainly was my intent to include all aspects of revenue requirement. I'm at alternative 1. Commissioner Huebner?
Yep, and I'm at alternative 2 on this for the same reasons as I was on the previous plan.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1 to be consistent with 8A. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, 9B, what is the appropriate accounting treatment for cost overruns? So the Exonia project experienced project cost overruns of $9.7 million. So we have, we can either defer those costs, we can not defer them and incorporate those cost overruns, or we can disallow some or all of the cost overruns. I would like to defer the cost overruns pending the project completion and an ability to take a look at all of the costs. And so that puts me at alternative 1, defer the cost overruns. Commissioner Huebner?
I'm in the same spot for the same reason as we've talked about the solar project, so I'm at alternative 1.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1, thank you.
And then if we authorize a deferral consistent with past decisions, I would not authorize carrying costs. So I'm at alt 2.
I'm in the same spot.
Commissioner Strand?
Alt 2, thank you.
Okay. Issue 10 is one that we saw in all 3 of the prior rate cases, and that is whether or not we should require the applicants to defer any impacts of the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. And consistent with the decisions we've made, I'm at alternative 1. I would require them to defer those impacts with carrying costs at the short-term debt rate.
Yep,
Commissioner Huebner?
I'm at alternative 1 and would just word it the same way we worded it in the last 3.
Yep, okay. Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1,
Okay.
thank you.
So now we get to fuel costs, and they're largely uncontested, I think, but for 2 issues related to West Riverside. So we skip to issue 13. And again, should the impacts of the acquisition of West Riverside, option 2, be included? And consistent with what we talked about as it relates to the revenue requirement, my position is alternative 2. It's not yet approved, and it would be unreasonable to include those costs in their 2024 monitored fuel costs. So alt 2.
I'm at alternative 2 as well.
Okay.
Alternative 2, thank
All
you.
right. And then we go back. So this came up in the Power and Light case. This is related to the equivalent forced outage rate for West Riverside. So there was a lot of testimony on the record in the Alliant case. And in this case, the company is asking that we accept Power and Light's equivalent forced outage rate. This is the one that I sort of went back and forth on with Alliant, and my position is that we should continue to try to approximate what's happening in real life as much as possible. And while the CPCN application included an equivalent forced outage rate that had one value, actual operation and experience has demonstrated that that's not the appropriate value to use. So because of that, I'm going to stay consistent with what I did in the Power and Light case, and I'm at alternative 2. Commissioner Huebner?
Yeah, and I'm going to be at alternative 1, which is consistent where I was with Alliant case 2. So I'm at alternative 1.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
In order to stay consistent with my position in the WP&L case, I'm going to be at alternative 1 as well.
Okay. Let's see. Now we go to rate issues. All right. So again, as I indicated at the top of our discussion, the applicants did not provide cost of service in this proceeding. And commission staff stated that it was not an issue because the intent was to carry forward the revenue allocation that was approved in the 2023 test year. So I understand the level of frustration, and I also understand that the way that the information was presented meant that it was virtually impossible to sort of even replicate cost of service. And I think that if parties or even staff would like to see a cost of service study run in a reopener, then that should be included in the discussion when the reopener is sought. I think to do it after the fact changes the rules on everybody, most importantly, including staff. So I appreciate the testimony, I appreciate the information that was put on the record, but in this particular case, I'm at alternative 1, and I would accept the absence of an electric cost of service study. Commissioner Huebner?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat on this, and I think the cost allocation docket that we decided to open from some of the previous rate cases this year is going to be a place to maybe talk about how to handle this as well, or at least give us some more insight as to different types of plants coming into service and how those should be allocated to customer classes. So for this case, I'm at alt 1.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1, thank you.
All right, so the next one is what's the appropriate electric revenue allocation for the test year? So basically, when it comes to revenue allocation, the applicant and staff are in the same place, and CUB was at the position that they would use the midpoint of the cost of service. But it's apples to oranges comparison because it's not exactly what we're looking at here. And so, as I indicated, staff's position is that the allocations stay the same, and because of that, 1 and 2 are basically the same. You end up at the same exact spot. So I'm at alternative 2, approve the allocation proposed by Tyler.
Not me, but
No.
that guy. All right, alternative 2, I'm in the same spot, staff. Thanks.
Right, yeah, that's, his does. Yeah.
Alternative 2,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, so issue 19, appropriate overall electric rate design. Applicants and commission staff supported achieving the revenue requirement through changes only to energy rates. WEG wanted some changes to be made on the demand charges, but energy rates are how we approached the MG&E reopener last year. And again, to reiterate, because rate design isn't a part of the reopener, if we then deviate from that and start making changes to demand rates, now we're getting into rate design. And I don't think that that's what was contemplated in the reopener. At least that's not what I contemplated. So because of that, I'm at alternative 1. I would accept the electric rate design as proposed by the company. Commissioner Huebner?
Yeah, I can join you there. I thought, as you described earlier, I thought WIG's comments on both this and the LNG that will be coming up were very interesting, and I do think that it just, we have to bring it back up next year. We have to continue to work on the cost allocation side, one case to the next. But for this particular one, I'll join you at alternative 1.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
I'm also at alternative 1. I did think that WIG raised some very reasonable points, but again, not within the scope of what we're looking at right now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now we move to the gas side. Again, the issue of natural gas cost of service, I would accept the absence of the natural gas cost of service, so I'm at alternative 1.
I am as well.
Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so now we talk about revenue allocation, and in this case, it was demonstrated that the applicants didn't completely follow the revenue allocation that we set in 2023. And my understanding of that is because the applicant states that their allocations are different because of existing contracts with different customer classes, and that the resulting tariffs reflect those existing contracts. It's hard to compare this to MG&E's reopener because they did file a cost of service study. And so I went back and forth. I took a look at sort of what we would have expected to see versus what we saw. And in my mind, while they were different, they didn't rise to the level of unreasonable. And I take the company at their word that it's the contract terms that are driving the allocations. And because of that, I'm at alternative one. I would approve the revenue allocation that they proposed.
Yeah, I ended in the same spot. So I'm at alternative one.
Okay, Commissioner Strain?
Thank you.
All right. Okay, WEPCO, what's the appropriate natural gas rate design? I'm also accepting the electric rate design proposed by the applicants, so I'm at alternative one.
Yeah, I'll join you there. Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1, thank you.
All right. Issue 23 for Wisconsin Gas, what's the appropriate natural gas revenue allocation? Again, I would approve the revenue allocation that was proposed by the applicants. I'm at alternative 1 for the same reasons.
Yep,
Commissioner
I'm
Weiner?
at alternative 1.
Okay. Commissioner
Alternative
Strand?
1, thanks.
And then following for natural gas rate design, I'm also at alternative 1.
Issue 24, alternative 1.
Yep.
Alternative 1, thank you.
Okay. All right. Other issues. This is issue 25. Have the applicants provided sufficient detail and analysis in this limited reopener relating to the recovery scenarios for the Oak Creek units? There were a number of alternatives that were suggested in the record, but as I indicated at the outset, we don't need to do anything at this point in time. In the next rate case, we will be talking about the actual retirements that have occurred and the impending retirements. And so I said it in the Power and Light case, and that is that Wisconsin statute, as it is currently written, does not allow for us to require securitization. It doesn't. The language is clear. And so because of that, that's why we have asked for alternative analyses to be done of cost recovery. I think that the company met the requirement that they provide additional scenarios, but there's nothing for us to do about it, in my opinion, at this point in time. I think it would be premature, and I would rather have the ability and the benefit of all of the information to make a decision. And so fortunately, we have a little bit of time. And so I found that they completed their portion of Order Condition 34 and that no action should be taken on this issue in this docket. So I'm at alts 1 and 3, both. Commissioner Huebner?
Okay. I was at alternative 2, so I do think they satisfied the order point, so I think that that's fine. But very similar to what we talked about with the Edgewater 5 plant for Alliant. In this docket, we were able to get more information. When we came into it last time, there was a settlement on the proposal to securitize $100 million, and my major concern with that was I couldn't find in the record at that point, well, how much is the balance? And so we do have that in front of us. The projected balance as of the retirement date would be about $407 million for just the environmental controls and about $656 or $657 million for the whole plant. So I think that that's very important information. And again, this applicant did some analysis based on $100 million of securitization. I think it would be appropriate to do analysis on the full environmental plant controls, which is, I think, what we asked Alliant to do. So looking at securitization of the full environmental controls. I also think it's not in this record, so I don't know how we bring it in, but certainly the Alliant case, there was a lot of talk about Department of Energy programs. And so as we look at other options on the table a year from now, I would think that DOE programs would be another potential opportunity for this applicant in this particular power plant. So that's why I was at Alt 2. I think they did what they had to do for this time, but I would ask them to continue to do analysis to seed our discussion in the next rate case as they look at this generation transition. So that's why I was at Alt 2.
Okay. And you would just, you would keep it all two as is written? You wouldn't add anything?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
With what I said on, what?
You would use the aligned language.
We can.
Let me look at that quick. Yeah, it's in the minutes.
Okay. Give me a sec.
Yeah, and so I had recalled, we had this conversation in the last case with them, right? And so I'm looking at the order, and it says, "So that the commission can consider whether and how various financial arrangements with similar customer benefits might be used to allow the applicants to recover a reasonable return on undepreciated assets while reducing the burden on customers, the applicants shall file an analysis of alternative recovery scenarios for all generating units that will be retired prior to the end of their useful life." So I thought that that lived on beyond the reopener. So that's why I
Right.
didn't think we needed to,
Additional?
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was my thinking. Because it's in a separate discussion in the order than the limited reopener. So that's why.
Okay.
That was my reasoning. Commissioner Strand?
So I appreciate the discussion on this, and I don't want to belabor the issue, but I kind of feel like, but for what you just said, 1, 2, and 3 are not mutually exclusive. We can say that they have
Yeah.
satisfied what we asked for in 34. We can also, which I think is kind of consistent with what the chair said, continue to have this discussion in their next rate case proceeding and also direct that type of information that we asked for in the Alliant decision point related to this to be included in that analysis for the future rate case, but then also not make them do anything else in this docket, which is literally like a hybrid of 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
So, and that's kind of where I was coming into this, and I was curious to hear what you two had to say.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna force me to choose,
Well, and maybe before you do, I'll just say Cindy mentioned, we've got the language from the minutes of how we treated Edgewater, and I would adopt that, just,
For the relevant components.
For the
There's some
relevant
parts of it that
components.
aren't
Yep.
relevant,
Can you
obviously.
read it, Commissioner Huebner?
well, see, in that one, we've authorized the recovery of Edge 5 using levelization, so I don't think we've done that here. But the relevant part would be the applicant shall submit additional analysis in its next rate case proceeding of alternatives regarding recovery of the remaining useful life of South Oak Creek, including without limitation an analysis of the impacts on levelization of the remaining net book value resulting from an adjustment to the ROE for South Oak Creek, additional cost-sharing methodologies, and securitization of the full remaining value of environmental controls. In addition, the applicant shall report back to the commission on any Department of Energy funding opportunities that may mitigate costs associated with the retirement of South Oak Creek.
All right. So you'd be at 1, 2, 1 and 2. Using
Well, a
that
portion of,
language,
yeah,
right?
I would say that they complied with what we asked for, but then I wouldn't say that the analysis is complete, because I think analysis of the full environmental controls balance, and now with the DOE, potentially new opportunities that weren't available or we didn't know about, there may be additional alternatives. So I wanted to just capture that basket of options.
Okay, all right. And I just interpret complete meaning it's complete for purposes of satisfying order condition 34.
Yeah, and that's,
And then that.
Yep.
Language from the relevant order remain in place. So you are,
okay. Sorry, I cut you off.
so I'm at 1 in terms of complete, satisfied for 34, order point 34. I'm at 2 in that I would like that additional analysis for the next rate case, including the relevant language from the WPNL order point. But then I also don't think there's anything else we need to do in this specific docket. So again, I'm kind of at 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
I think
All
you
right.
summarized it
Okay.
well.
I think we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think all utilities have been adequately put on notice that this is going to be an issue, right? And so,
Absolutely.
I can join all of you there.
All right.
The same.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Next issue. Next issue is issue 26. Have the applicants provided sufficient details regarding their storm hardening program as required by order condition 34 from the final decision? Now, again, I think there was a little conflation of what we were seeking. Recall, we allowed the recovery of approximately $78 million related to the storm hardening program in the last rate case. That is an incremental portion of the storm hardening program as a whole. But they're not in here in front of us today seeking additional dollars related to that storm hardening program. I think Commissioner Huebner brought it up in the context of the general rate case that he felt that we needed more details, and I joined him. And so that was the impetus for this order condition. It was certainly not my intent to open the entire storm hardening program up, because I don't think that's appropriate, given they're not seeking recovery of all of the dollars associated with that program. So for purposes of satisfying the order condition 34, I think that they have done that. I certainly think that Cubs and Walnut Way's testimony is relevant and it is helpful. There's just nothing for us to do about it in this docket. So because of that, I'm at alternative 1. Commissioner Huebner?
Okay. Yeah, this has been an interesting one for the 2 years in a row we've seen it, from my perspective at least. I guess it's my understanding that they do plan to spend $50 million in 2024, and that, the line item for this was, I thought it was $38 million from 2023, and that would carry over. So they're not seeking any more money, but included in rates is spending $38 million. That's my understanding.
Oh, I thought it was 78. Yep, you're right, 38.
I think that there was a lot more provided in this record, and there's a clear map, certainly of the projects and a detailed list of the projects to be pursued in the near term. What I would do with this is continue to have them provide a plan like this in future rate cases, because I just don't want to see this become a new budget line item where we're not getting the detail, and suddenly we look back and all of a sudden, 10 years from now, there's $700 million has been spent with not sufficient oversight. So,
But they agree to that in the next issue.
yeah, well, they agree to send reports afterwards.
Yeah.
What I think should, in addition to reports on what they spent the money on, what I would actually add 2 things. I would say they should every year bring a plan in, or every rate case, right, if it's gonna be a 2-year case. How are they gonna allocate these dollars, and how are they justifying which investments? And the other thing I would do is I would actually put a deferral on this. So if they don't spend up to that budget, that we have an opportunity to return those dollars to ratepayers or move them forward to the next year. Otherwise, there's the record in this discussed some supply chain delays, et cetera. So, $38 million is in the rate base for this year. What if they don't spend that all? And we just got done talking about the Edgewater O&M budget not being fully spent, or sorry, the South Oak Creek O&M budget. I would like to see if those dollars aren't spent, that we've got an opportunity to return those to ratepayers, not unlike what we did with the e-readiness program for Alliant. So those would be my two adds. I would do the uncontested that's in 26A, but I would say continue to bring analysis as to what the expenses and the investments are going to be for the upcoming rate case. In every rate case, they ask for this. But then I would also add a deferral on it for 2024.
So you would defer it, or you would set it up as escrow?
I would defer it, so if they don't spend up to 38 million, because the record in the case, now it hadn't been construction season yet, but when direct came in, there was only $5 or $6 million had been spent out of the 38. Now, obviously, construction seasons happen, so I don't know what that dollar is today. It may be approaching the 38 million, but if supply chain delays and other things are delaying these projects, I don't want to see 38 million requested for 2024 when they've got $15 million left over from last year. You know, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. And I can respect that position on a going forward basis.
Yeah, we can't do anything
I
about
can't-
2023,
right,
but just,
exactly.
I would put a deferral for the 2024 program.
When they come back, not as part of this case, because I think that's beyond the scope of this proceeding, for us to start futzing with what may or may not be in their next test year, apart from what we authorize them to look at. So are you saying, as it sits right now, you would order a deferral of any future spending on the storm hardening program? That's your position?
For 2020, starting Jan 1, 2024 with this test year, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's appropriate. I think if we want to have that discussion, we can have that discussion in
Yeah.
the context of an overall rate case. But when I look at the enabling language for the limited reopener, I fear that that goes beyond what we can do, and that makes me uncomfortable.
Okay.
So I would not be able to join you in that. I recognize it's good to have additional information. I agree with that. I would use it as a pre-filed data request for their next rate case. It's out there. There's a lot of discussion about it. Have them provide additional information, and then perhaps staff should put testimony on the record in their next comprehensive rate case about either the use of escrow accounting or the appropriateness of a deferral. But I'm not prepared to do that in this case. Commissioner Strand.
I agree with you about the deferral aspect of this. Surprise, I was a little hybrid and squishy on this one as well. So I do think that they satisfied order point 34. I think part of the reason that order 34 was issued is because we did need more information and we don't want to have to chase this down again. So I also thought that it would be reasonable to have them provide this similar amount of information in their next full rate case when they're attempting to recover related to storm hardening charges or the storm hardening program. So I think I'm, again, somewhat of a hybrid. I'm at alternative one, but then would also like them to provide this detailed information at the time of filing, whether, issuing through data request or just when they put forward, recovering for storm hardening. I think it's important that we have that up front, and then again, that we're not chasing it down after the fact, kind of like we did here. So that's where I am, but again, I wouldn't go as far as to require the deferral.
Okay. All right.
And I'll join where she's at, and then I would add a deferral, which you guys can dissent on.
Okay.
Or I'll dissent.
Okay.
And would have added deferral, but yep.
Yep, got it.
Yeah, hopefully that didn't make it muddier.
No, I think you're
Okay.
right.
I think you
captured
clarified it.
Thank you.
Right, so you're good.
Yep, and similar to what we did on the association dues with requiring that the time of filing, they provide specific information as to the components of the plan, anticipated expenditures, and the rationale for the selection of the projects.
Yep.
Correct. Okay. So we're good to go to issue 27? Okay. All right. Issue 27 is what, if any, additional,
Yep, sorry.
What, if any, additional action is appropriate for the commission to take based upon the evidence in the record? And again, I hit on it at the outset. This is a really limited scope proceeding meant to examine incremental impacts to the revenue requirement as a carryover from their last case. There are 2 current dockets with this utility that are pending. There is docket 5 TU-100, and there's docket 5-UI-121. It's my understanding that both of those dockets are proceeding in a productive manner. So I would encourage that to continue. And as I said in the last 3 cases, we have continuously clarified that affordability and overall energy burden are increasingly important. That's not to say that they never were important. They've always been important, but they continue to be important when we're looking at the impact of a utilities generation building program. And so there's nothing more that I would do as it relates to this docket. I would allow the 2 dockets that I mentioned to continue to progress. And we can have additional conversation in both of those dockets, but I don't think it's necessary to open up something additional because of the existence of those 2 dockets. So because of that, I'm at alternative 2. Commissioner Hebner?
Yep, I landed in the same spot, but I do think the other dockets, in particular the lift, is really important. And that was one of the things that we heard loud and clear from the rate case last year was the reconnection fee, and I know that's a part of that docket, so I'm looking forward to that continuing to move forward. So I'll join you at alternative 2 for this case.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
I'm at alternative 2 for the same reasons. Thank you.
And then issue 28 is should we include the standard order conditions? And I'm at alternative 1.
I am as well.
Alternative 1. Thank you.
Did you need to take a break?
I want to take a quick break on a fuel issue.
Okay.
Yep. I'll be as quick as I can.
All right.
And we're good from staff. So we're ready for a motion if you are.
All right, we're back from our break.
All right, you ready for a motion?
Sure. Let's do it. Bake sale has already started.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's starting in 9 minutes, so let's make it quick.
Okay, in docket 5 UR 110, I move we approve the joint application of,
The secretary.
Oh,
oh, pause.
we need the secretary. Unless Megan wants to pinch hit.
Okay.
Is he at the bake sale?
I texted him.
Okay, we're back and we're ready for a motion.
Okay, in docket 5 UR 110, I move we approve the limited electric and natural gas rates reopener and 2024 fuel cost plan, consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that moves us to agenda item 20, which is docket 6690-UR-127. So similar to the case that we just took up, this relates to Wisconsin Public Service Corporation and specifically order point 12 of our final decision in 6690-UR-127 authorized the applicant to file a limited reopener for the 2024 test year electric operations to address additional capital investment through the generation reshaping plan that will achieve commercial operation in 2023 and 2024, as well as to address reduced O&M and fuel expenses from future coal plant retirements. Wisconsin Public Service proposed to raise base electric rates by roughly $8.7 million and to lower rates overall by $28.3 million in 2024. After Commission staff's audit, staff affirmed the company's request to raise base electric rates and recommended an overall decrease in revenue requirement of roughly $39.8 million in 2024. So my understanding in this case is that we do not have to discuss any uncontested issues except for issue 10. And so we can dive right in. We'll go right to issue 1. there's going to be a lot of overlap with this last case. So issue 1, again, is should the incremental revenue requirement impacts for Paris Solar Generating and Battery Energy Storage System, Darien, and the Weston Reciprocating Internal Combustion Engine Project be included in 2024? And for this, I am at alternative 1. I would include those incremental revenue requirement impacts. Commissioner Hebner?
Yep, I'm at alternative 1.
Commissioner Strand?
Alternative 1, thank you.
Okay. Issue 2 relates to the incremental revenue requirement for the distribution-connected solar projects. Again, consistent with our discussion in the last case, I'm at alternative 1. Commissioner Hebner?
Yep, I am as well.
Okay.
Alternative 1.
All right. Issue 3, should the material and supplies inventory associated with Weston Rice be included in the 2024? And I realize I misspoke in the last case. I was thinking of this issue. This was the one that was inadvertently omitted from the original application materials. And staff did have a chance to review this and had no concerns with the calculation. Materials and supplies are part of rate base, and because of that, I'm at alternative 1. I would include them. Commissioner Hebner?
Yep, I'll join you at alternative 1.
Alternative 1, thank you.
Issue 4, what's the appropriate accounting treatment for the incremental revenue requirement impact of any change of in-service dates? So again, consistent with MG&E and the WEPCO case, I'm at alternative 1. I would defer the revenue requirement impact of the change to in-service date.
Agreed.
Alternative 1, thank you.
Okay. And then issue 4A, again, I would authorize carrying costs at the short-term debt rate, consistent with our decision in prior cases. So modified alt 1.
Yep, I'm in the same spot.
Okay.
Short-term debt.
As well, thank you.
All right. Issue 5, deferring the impacts of the IIJA. I'm at alternative 1, defer them with carrying cost at the short-term debt rate.
Yep, I'm in the same spot as we've been on the other cases.
Alternative 1, thank you.
Issue 6, 7 are uncontested. Issue 8 is, should the impacts of the acquisition of West Riverside Option 2 be included? Again, consistent with the positions we've taken, this is premature, and so I'm at alternative 2.
I am as well.
Alternative 2, thank you.
All right, issue 9, the appropriate equivalent forced outage rate. I'm staying consistent with where I have been. That puts me at alt 2. I would accept applicant's proposed outage rate. Commissioner Hebner.
Yep, I've been at alt 1, and I'll be at alt 1 here.
Alt 1, thank you.
All right, issue 10, should the monitored fuel costs be adjusted for updated market prices, associated railroad escalations per existing contracts, new fuel-related signed contracts, and dispatch price adjustments to the economic dispatch model for coal-fired generation to achieve a coal burn that is consistent with desired coal inventory levels, given anticipated coal rail delivery performance. The applicant shall provide this information to the interveners at the same time it provides it to commission staff. My understanding is there was a request to discuss this.
Yep, and that was probably me. Consistent with how I treated fuel for Alliant, this particular applicant is a co-owner of Columbia, and there's an adjustment in the Exhibit 2 for PSC staff Mylata related to Columbia coal delivery issues. So it's about $4.5 million that I would not include that and continue to push the applicants and the owners to get fuel to the plant appropriately. So that was my adjustment. I would take out the Columbia coal deliveries limitations from this, as I've done in the past.
Okay. Understood. Commissioner Strand.
I didn't really dig into that part of this, so I think in order to stay consistent with where I was on Alliant, that I would just remain uncontested on this and not take that 4.5 million out.
Yep. I'm at the same spot. I'm staying. I would not make an adjustment. All right, so issue 11 is uncontested. Issue 12 is, again, about the absence of an electric cost of service. I'm, again, at alternative 1, accepting that absence.
I am as well.
Alt 1, thank you.
Issue 13 is the appropriate electric revenue allocation. I would approve the revenue allocation proposed by commission staff by Tyler Mulemans, not you, Tyler. So I'm at Alt 2.
I'm at Alt 2 as well, and just because the percentages are on this, I think it's important to note, this is a rate decrease. This is a particular reopener that we're adding some new construction projects in, but because of the renewable generation and the reduction in fuel costs, this is actually going to be a rate decrease to WPS customers this year.
Yeah, and I think it's really good that you bring that up. And we've seen that with another utility. We saw that with NSP, that the decrease in fuel costs have offset any increase that would need to occur. And I think it's important to keep that in mind as we're in this for the long haul. And we have to remember that we have to take that long-term view that it is going to be costly to put certain generating facilities into service, to construct them. But this is a case where you see the impact of the lower fuel costs coming to bear to the benefit of customers. So I'm happy you brought that up.
Great
Commissioner
points,
Strand.
thank you. Alt 2.
All right. Rate design, I'm at Alt 2.
I am as well.
Alt 2, thank you.
Okay. Should the utilities be required to include an energy burden impact analysis alongside any rate increase request? So I don't think, I would not do this, consistent with the positions that I've taken and the discussions, or the remarks I've made in the past. I think all of the utilities are on notice that this is something that we always take a look at, but I would not add any additional requirements. So I'm at alternative 2.
Yeah, I can join you there. I had just written down alternative 3, take no action at all. Just because the trailing end of these phrases are to do it or not to do it along any rate increase, and I don't want to presuppose that we would or wouldn't is my thought, so I was just at take no action here.
Okay.
But I can join you at 2.
Okay. Commissioner
Alt
Stern.
2, thank you.
Issue 16, should the commission include the standard order conditions? I'm at alternative 1, I would include them.
Yep, I'm in the same spot.
Alternative 1, thank you.
All right.
Any issues? Great. In docket 6690 UR 127, I move that we approve the limited electric rate reopener and 2024 fuel cost plan consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that concludes our official business for today. The next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 30th, 2023 at 10:30 a.m. I wish you all a safe, a happy, and a healthy Thanksgiving, and we can have a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn until Thursday, November 30th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just in time for the bake sale.